Welcome back. Lesson 3.3, Completing the Square Part 2. We're going to build on the last video that you guys watched and show you how to solve by completing the square. Let me show you what I mean. So look at this example that's over here on the right-hand side of the screen. X squared minus 10x plus 7. Well, based upon what we saw last time, this 7 should be whatever this was to make that the perfect square. And in this case, it would be that 10 divided by 2. So this should be 25. It's not a 25, it's a 7. So the shortcut rule doesn't apply here. But that's actually what we're going to fix. We're going to fix this. And in order to do that, we're going to create the perfect square trinomial, rewrite it as that quantity of square roots, and then solve using square roots. So let me show you what I mean with this first example problem. So the big issue that I have is this is plus 7. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move that plus 7 to the other side. And how am I going to do that? Well, to undo plus 7, I subtract 7 from both sides. 0 minus 7 is negative 7. So now I'm going to do those other problems, or like I was doing the last problems, where I say, what's in the box? We figure out what goes in that box. But here's the thing. You got to remember that if you're going to add something to the left-hand side of the equation, you have to add it to the right-hand side too. So let's figure out what goes in the box. And this is no different than a couple of those problems we were doing at the end, where we look here, and we take that negative 10, we divide it by 2, and we square it, and that's the number that goes in here. So negative 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So I'm going to end up adding 25 to both sides. All right, so let's see here. What does that give me? Well, that would give me on the left-hand side here, x minus 5 squared. And that's going to be equal to, let's see here, negative 7 plus 25. Negative 7 plus 25 is 18. So I get x minus 5 squared equals 18. Now, just a reminder, that 5, right? That 5 is going to be either think of it as the square root of the number 25, or it's going to be that negative 10 divided by 2. That's where this 5 right here is coming from. Okay, so now that we have this x minus 5, that quantity squared equals 18, we can solve it like we were doing those other problems with square roots, by just taking the square root of both sides. It's extremely important that you don't forget the plus or minus. We have plus or minus the square root of 18, which I can simplify down. I can simplify that down. If I think about the biggest perfect square that I can divide into 18, it's 3 with a leftover. The biggest square root that I can divide into 18 is 9. So it's 9 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Of course, the square root of 9 is where I'm getting that 3 from. So that's how I'm simplifying that down. Finally, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. Now look and pay attention to what that looks like. It's just going to be 5 plus or minus 3 square roots of 2. That should be a 2. Answer's not pretty, but it is what the answer is. Let me go ahead and fix that. I need to fix that, make that look better, more like a 2. All right, so we get 5 plus or minus 3 square roots of 2. All right, if you didn't get it that time, let's try another problem. Let's look at another problem. X squared minus 18x plus 5 equals 0. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract that 5 from both sides. That'll give me x squared minus 18x equals negative 5. I'm going to leave a little space because I'm going to complete the square. I'm going to figure out what goes in the box. And again, it's going to be that negative 18 divided by 2 squared. That's what's going to go in the box. Negative 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I'm going to put 9 squared in that box. Or 81, right? That's the same thing. 9 squared is 81. So on the left-hand side of this problem, I'll end up with x minus 9. That quantity squared equals negative 5 plus 81. That's 76. Then I'll solve by taking the square root of both sides. That'll give me x minus 9 equals plus or minus the square root of 76, not 79, 76. Let's see here, 76. The square root of 76, what's the biggest perfect square that I can divide into that? It's actually only 4. So I can simplify down the square root of 76 into 2 square roots of 19. So that'll give me x minus 9 equals plus or minus 2 square roots of 19. Now I got to still isolate x, so I'll add 9 to both sides. Give me a final answer of x equals 9 plus or minus 2 square roots of 19. Really, folks, it's this step right here, this second step that's so critical. That's where you're actually completing the square. You're figuring out what number to put in the box so that you can end up with this binomial squared. You can use that shortcut. So it's really this second step that's critical. Let's look at another example. How about this one? 3x squared plus 12x plus 15. Ooh, okay. This is a big time problem because of this number that's here. Completing the square really doesn't work when there's a number right there in front of the x squared. So we're going to do the thing that makes sense. We're going to take and we're going to divide the 3 into every single thing that we see there. We're essentially factoring the 3 out and dividing both sides by 3 to get rid of that number. When I do, I get x squared plus 4x plus 5 equals 0. And I can just go through the process exactly like I did in the previous problem. So if you think you got it, maybe you want to pause the video and check it out, see if you can do it. If not, I'm going to work through it right now. So I'm going to subtract that 5 from both sides. I'm going to give a spot there for the box so I can say what's in the box, what goes in the box. And remember, it's this b value divided by 2 squared. So that'll be 4 divided by 2 is 2, so 2 squared in the box. So let's see what that'll get. That's 4. So I get x plus 2, that quantity squared, equals negative 5 plus 4, that's a negative 1. Now, I know what you're thinking. You can't square something and get a negative value, and that was true. But remember, we talked about complex numbers. I'm going to go up here. So when we have x plus 2, the quantity squared equals negative 1, we can take the square root of both sides, no problem. We get x plus 2 on the left side, and we get plus or minus the square root of negative 1 on the right. Remember, that means plus or minus I. And then my final step, I'll subtract 2 from both sides. So I get negative 2 plus or minus I. So just a reminder, that means negative 2 plus I is a solution, and negative 2 minus I is a solution to this problem. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to write it out twice so you can see that there are 2 answers. Let's try another one. 2x squared minus 20x minus 40 equals 0. So again, that 2 right there is the problem. So we're just going to go ahead and divide everything by 2. That gives me x squared minus 10x minus 20 equals 0. I'll add my 20 to both sides to make room for the box. So I can say, what's in the box? What's in the box? Well, it's that negative 10 divided by 2 squared. So 5 squared is going to go in the box, which is 25. So that gives me x minus 5 squared equals 45. I have that quantity squared. I'm going to go up here again. X minus 5 squared equals 45. I'll take the square root of both sides. I'll get x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 45. Let me rate that a little bit better. The square root of 45. And if I simplify my radical, let's see here, the biggest perfect square that I can divide into 45 is in fact 9. So the square root of 9 is 3, with the square root of 5 left over. I'll add that 5 to both sides. I'll get 5 plus or minus 3 square roots of 5. And again, 5 plus 3 square roots of 5 is an answer. 5 minus 3 square roots of 5 is the other answer. All right, so we've done 4 examples. Why don't you try a couple of these on your own? Now, I think it's really important that you pay attention to the format of the problems, especially when you get down here to 5 and 6. Don't let the formatting of these 2 problems confuse you. Instead, take this and multiply it out and try to get that quadratic equation. So, go ahead and give these 6 problems a try. Pause the video. We will go through these very shortly. Go ahead and pause the video right now. All right, let's take a look at number 1. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of that 8. We're going to move the 8 over to the other side. We will then leave room for our box so we can say what goes in that box. So it would be that negative 4 divided by 2 squared. So that's 2 squared that would go in there. 4. So that gives me x minus 2, that quantity squared equals a negative 4. I'll take the square root of both sides. I'll get x minus 2 equals plus or minus. The square root of negative 4 is 2i. So I get x equals 2 plus or minus 2i for that problem. Let's take a look at the next one. Number 2. What am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to move that 5 to the other side. I'm going to add. I'm going to take this. I'm going to say, what can I add to both sides? What's in the box? What goes in that box? And it's the 8 divided by 2 squared. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I'll put 4 squared on both sides. That makes this left side turn into, x plus 4, that quantity squared. And 5 plus 16, that's 21. I'll take the square root of both sides. I'll get x plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 21. Subtract my 4 from both sides. I get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 21. There's my 2 answers right there. Number 3. First thing I'm going to do, I want to get rid of that negative 3. So let's go ahead and divide both sides by negative 3. That'll give me x squared. Let's hear it. Negative 18 divided by negative 3 is positive 6. Negative 6 divided by negative 3 is positive 2. I'll subtract my 2 from both sides. I'll say, what's in the box? What's in the box? It's always that 6 divided by 2 squared. So that means 3 squared will go there, which is 9. So that turns into x plus 3 squared equals negative 2 plus 9, which is 7. I'll take the square root of both sides. That'll give me x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. I can't simplify that, so don't drop the radical here. Lastly, I'll subtract my 3 from both sides. I'll get negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 7 as my final answer. What about for 4? Well, I already got that negative 68 on the other side, so that's helpful. So I really just got to divide both sides by 4. That'll give me x squared. 32x divided by 4 turns into 8x, which is equal to, let's hear, negative 68 divided by 4, which is negative 17. All right, so now I just got to figure out what's in the box, what goes in the box. And again, it'll be that 8 divided by 2 squared that'll add to both sides. So 4 squared, which is in fact 16. So that will make this left-hand side turned into x plus 4 squared. I got the negative 17 plus 6, which is negative 1. I'll take the square root of both sides. That'll make x plus 4 equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 1, which is just I. So my answer here for number 4 is x equals, after I subtract 4 from both sides, negative 4 plus or minus I. Let's go on. How about number 5? I told you, don't let this form trick you. So the first thing you want to do is you want to distribute that 6x into the parenthesis. And you get 6x squared plus 12x equals negative 42. Now it looks like the last problems we've just been doing. So you'll divide both sides by 6. Negative 42 divided by 6 is negative 7. You'll fill in the box. You'll say, what's in the box? So it'll be that b value, 2 divided by 2 squared, or 1 squared, that will add to both sides. This left side turns into x plus 1, the quantity squared. Negative 7 plus 1 is negative 6. I'll take the square root of both sides. That'll give me x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 6. I'll subtract 1 from both sides. I'll get negative 1 plus or minus. I'll go ahead and simplify my radical. I square roots of 6. What about for number 6 over here? Same thing. Let's distribute the 2x. I'll divide everything by 2 to get rid of the 2 that's in front of the x squared. I'll complete the square by saying what's in the box. Again, it's that 2 divided by 2 squared, or 1 squared, that gets added to both sides. That makes this left-hand side x minus 1 squared. Careful with that one. Equals 101. I'll take the square root of both sides. I get x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 101. Then I'll add my 1 to both sides. I get 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 101. 101 we can't simplify down at all. Okay, those were your 6 example problems. Hopefully you got it down now at this point. So there'll be some more practice tomorrow, of course. Make sure you take your time with this concept, and I'll see you then.